What if I told you that Christmas is not just a celebration, but a divine announcement spoken into the darkest moments of human history? Before the lights, before the music, before the traditions, there was a promise from heaven that no night would ever be too long and no darkness would ever be too strong. Christmas is the moment God stepped into the world and declared that fear would not rule, sin would not reign, and hopelessness would not win. This is not a story meant to be admired from a distance. It is a message meant to transform lives, because when God releases His light, darkness has no choice but to move. Christmas is not merely a celebration of joy, lights, and songs. It is God's bold declaration, spoken into the deepest night of human history, that darkness will never have the final word. For generations, humanity lived under the weight of fear, sin, confusion, and brokenness, wondering if God was silent or distant. The silence felt heavy and the darkness felt endless. Yet Christmas announces that even when darkness seems strongest, it is already defeated. God did not wait for the world to become better, purer, or worthy. He entered the darkness as it was and declared His authority over it. Darkness does not disappear because people become strong. It disappears because God reveals His light. Darkness tries to convince people that pain is permanent and that failure defines their future. It whispers lies that God has forgotten, that prayers are unanswered, that hope is unrealistic. Christmas exposes these lies. The birth of Christ proves that God moves most powerfully when circumstances look impossible. Light did not come after darkness ended. Light came while darkness still ruled. That is why Christmas is not dependent on perfect situations. It is a divine interruption, a reminder that God steps into chaos and transforms it from within. When God declared that darkness would not win, He did not do it with thunder or destruction. He chose a different method, one that human logic could never understand. God released His light into the world through humility, not power. The world expected a king with armies, a leader with authority, someone who would dominate by force. Instead, God chose vulnerability. He wrapped eternity in flesh. He placed divine glory in a feeding trough. This was not weakness. This was strategy. Humility disarms darkness because darkness thrives on pride, control, and fear. The humility of Christmas reveals the heart of God. He did not come to impress the powerful, but to reach the broken. Shepherds, not kings, were the first witnesses. A young woman, not a royal queen, carried the promise. A stable, not a palace, became the birthplace of hope. God was showing humanity that His light does not depend on status, wealth, or human recognition. His light flows freely to those who are open, humble, and hungry for truth. Through humility, God made His light accessible. If He had come in power alone, many would have been excluded, but through humility everyone could draw near. The poor, the forgotten, the sinful, and the wounded all found a place in this story. Christmas teaches that God does not overpower hearts, He invites them. Light does not force its way in, it shines, and those who desire truth are drawn to it. Darkness tries to rule through intimidation, but humility breaks its grip. A humble heart cannot be controlled by fear. When God chose humility, He revealed a kingdom that operates differently from the world's systems. This kingdom advances not through violence, but through transformation, not through domination, but through love. Darkness may roar loudly, but humility carries quiet authority. The promise that darkness will never have the final word is connected directly to how God released His light. By choosing humility, God ensured that His light would continue to spread from heart to heart, generation to generation. Power can be resisted, but humility melts resistance. Force can be challenged, but love disarms the soul. Christmas reveals that the greatest victory over darkness begins with surrender, obedience, and trust in God's ways. This is why Christmas is still relevant in every generation. Darkness still exists, fear still tries to rule, and suffering still touches human lives. Yet the same light released through humility continues to shine. It enters ordinary homes, broken hearts, and silent prayers. It proves again and again that God's way is higher, His timing is perfect, and His promises never fail. The light of God does not come to condemn humanity, but to expose what has been hidden so healing can begin. Darkness survives where truth is avoided, where guilt is buried, and where shame is allowed to define identity. Many people believe that if God's light truly touches their lives, it will only reveal their failures and punish them for their mistakes. But Christmas reveals a different reality. God's light enters gently, not to destroy the broken, but to restore them. Exposure is not rejection, it is the first step toward freedom. When light shines into a dark room, it does not argue with what it reveals. It simply shows what is there. In the same way, God's light brings clarity to the heart. It exposes wounds that were ignored, habits that were hidden, and lies that were believed for too long. This exposure is not meant to shame, but to heal. A wound cannot be treated if it remains unseen. Christmas is God saying He sees humanity completely and still chooses to come close. The light of God also heals because it carries truth. Darkness distorts identity, convincing people they are defined by their past, their sins, or their failures. God's light corrects these lies and replaces them with divine truth. It reminds the lost that they are loved, the broken that they are valuable, and the weak that they are not abandoned. Healing begins when truth enters the heart, and truth cannot exist without light. Light also guides. Many people are not living in rebellion, they are living in confusion. They are searching, trying, and struggling to understand their purpose. Darkness creates uncertainty and fear of the future. God's light provides direction without force. It illuminates the next step rather than revealing the entire journey. Christmas teaches that God does not overwhelm His people with answers. He leads them step by step, teaching them to trust His presence rather than their understanding. Guidance through light requires surrender. A person must be willing to follow what is revealed. The wise men followed the star not knowing the full destination, yet they trusted the light they were given. In the same way, God's light invites obedience. It does not push or pressure, it invites and waits. Those who follow find themselves drawn closer to truth, peace, and purpose. No matter how deep the darkness becomes, God's light always overcomes it. Darkness can appear strong when it spreads, but it is powerless against even the smallest light. One candle can change an entire room. Christmas is the reminder that God does not need a perfect world to shine His light. He places it directly into brokenness, and brokenness cannot extinguish it. Darkness may take many forms: fear, sin, oppression, grief, or despair, but none of them are permanent. Darkness is temporary by nature. It exists only until light arrives. God's light is eternal, unchanging, and unstoppable. When it enters a life, transformation begins. Chains loosen, fear loses control, and hope is restored. The victory of light over darkness is not symbolic. It is real and personal. It happens in hearts, families, and communities. It happens quietly, often unnoticed by the world, yet powerfully felt by those who experience it. Christmas is the assurance that even when darkness feels overwhelming, it is already defeated. The presence of light is proof that darkness has limits, and that God's promise remains unbroken. Christmas reveals a God who does not remain distant from human suffering, but enters it with purpose and love. It reminds us that darkness never has the final word, no matter how powerful it appears. God chose to release his light through humility, showing that true power is found not in force but in surrender and obedience. That light does not come to condemn, but to expose, heal, and guide every heart willing to receive it. It shines into confusion and gives direction, into brokenness and brings restoration, into fear and releases peace. The promise of Christmas is not dependent on perfect circumstances. It is rooted in the unchanging nature of God. The same light that entered the world in humility continues to overcome darkness in every generation, proving that no shadow is too deep and no life is beyond redemption.